There's a place most people avoid. A stretch of land nobody talks about. At least not openly. It lies just beyond the town of Bramble Creek, where the corn grows taller than a man, and the wind whispers secrets through the stalks. They call it Hollowfield. Most call it cursed. I didn't believe in curses. Not really. I was 22, reckless, with the kind of bravado that makes people laugh at the idea of ghosts or haunted fields. But the first time I saw the Scarecrow, I didn't laugh. It wasn't one of those cheap Halloween decorations you see propped on poles. This thing was different. Its straw-stuffed body leaned slightly forward, as if it were waiting. Its head, a stitched burlap sack, tilted in a way that made it feel alive. The eyes, just black buttons at first glance, seemed to follow me. I remember walking the perimeter of the field for the first time, camera in hand. A friend dared me to spend the night there, to prove I was braver than the town's old ghost stories. I should have said no, but I didn't. The sun dipped behind the hills faster than I expected. Shadows stretched across the corn, stretching and twisting like dark fingers. By the time twilight arrived, the Scarecrow was no longer at the spot I had first seen it. I could swear it moved. Just a few steps. Or maybe it was the wind. That's what I told myself. Hours passed. My flashlight barely cut through the towering stalks. Every rustle sounded like footsteps. Every shifting shadow felt like something watching me. And then I noticed it. Its eyes reflecting the faint light of my phone, gleaming in the dark. It had moved closer. Heart pounding, I turned to run. But the paths I thought I knew seemed different. Cornstalks blocked the way I had come, and through the rustling, a whisper of laughter, or maybe just the wind, echoed. I survived the night, barely. But that Scarecrow! It didn't leave, and neither did I, because that night something changed. I began to notice it everywhere, at the edge of my vision, behind my windows, in reflections. It wasn't just in Hollowfield anymore. It had learned how to follow. When morning finally came, I convinced myself I'd imagined most of it. The Scarecrow was back in its original place, leaning against the old wooden post, motionless, as the sunrise painted the field gold. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. "It's just a scarecrow," I muttered, though my voice sounded hollow even to me. But then I noticed the footprints. They weren't mine. Not the ones I had made the night before. They started at the edge of the field and trailed in a way that suggested someone, or something, had circled the entire area. And the tracks? They led straight to me. I felt a cold chill crawl up my spine. I tried to tell my friends about it later. They laughed, said I probably tripped over my own shadow, or that it was some prank by the locals. But they weren't there. They didn't see the eyes. By the third night, I stopped trying to rationalize it. The Scarecrow was moving, and it wasn't subtle. Not anymore. I had set up a few cameras around the field, thinking I could catch some explanation. Maybe a farmer playing a trick. But when I checked the footage the next morning, my stomach turned. The Scarecrow had not only moved, it had been following me. Every shot showed it in a slightly different position. One frame, by the old barn. Next frame, a few feet closer to where I slept. Another, standing at the edge of the road, watching me leave the field at dawn. I stopped sleeping. At first it was just nights in the field, but soon, even in my apartment, I felt the same piercing gaze. Reflections in the window, in my phone's screen, in the dark corners of my room. I knew it was there, watching, waiting. And then the letters started. Small things at first. A single straw in my mailbox. A note with a single word. Move. At first, I thought it was a prank. But soon, the notes became more specific. Turn left at the corner. Stop at the bridge. I followed them, thinking it was a joke. That's when I realized it wasn't, because one night, the Scarecrow was waiting for me, exactly where the last note had told me to go. And this time, it didn't just lean. It tilted its head, stepped forward, and let out a sound that was neither wind nor animal. It was deliberate, a dry, rasping rasp that sounded almost like words. And in that moment, I understood something horrifying. It wasn't just watching me anymore. It wanted me to move. The days after that encounter were the worst of my life. I couldn't stay in one place without feeling its gaze pressing on me. At first, I tried to convince myself I was paranoid, that the Scarecrow couldn't possibly follow me beyond the field. I was wrong. It started with small things. A shadow flickering past my apartment window when no one was there. The reflection of its crooked burlap face in a passing car's side mirror. A sense of being watched even when the street was empty. Then came the movement. I would step outside, thinking I was alone, and in the distance, among the fields at the town's edge, I would see it, standing perfectly still, and then inching forward, slowly, deliberately. Not running, not chasing, just approaching. I tried to get help. My friends laughed, calling me dramatic, or said stress was making me hallucinate. But it wasn't a hallucination. The proof came the night I locked myself in my apartment and heard it scraping its way up the stairs outside my door. Scrape! 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 By the time I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but a single stalk of straw was left lying across my welcome mat. Its little signature: I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every glance over my shoulder, every creak in the floorboards, every shadow became it. One night, I tried to escape. I drove to the city, hundreds of miles away, thinking the Scarecrow wouldn't follow me beyond Hollowfield. I was wrong. At first, it was subtle, a reflection in the window as I drove through empty roads. The feeling that my rearview mirror wasn't showing just the road behind me, but eyes, black, button-like, stitched eyes, watching, waiting. And then I saw it clearly, on the side of the highway, standing by a field I didn't recognize. But it didn't belong there, not in the city, not near anywhere I had been before. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding. I blinked, and it was gone. Every day since then, I've noticed the signs. Small, insidious, unavoidable. It's in the shadows, always there. And the messages have become more urgent. Move now. Don't stop. You can't hide. I don't know what it wants from me. I don't know if it's alive, or something older. Something that existed long before the first corn grew in Hollowfield. But I do know this. It's patient. It doesn't hurry. It doesn't need to, because it knows. Eventually, I'll have no choice but to move. And tonight. Kandertuicht. I think it's finally coming for me. I realized I couldn't run anymore. Not from the Scarecrow. Not from the feeling that it was always right behind me. I had to understand it. So I went back to Hollowfield. The locals weren't friendly about it. Most refused to talk, crossing themselves when I mentioned the Scarecrow. One old man, his hands shaking like dry leaves, finally whispered a warning. It's not a Scarecrow. It's a watcher. It's older than the town. It sees what you do. What you can't even admit to yourself. I pressed him, desperate for answers, and slowly he told me the story. Decades ago, Hollowfield had been nothing but swampy farmland, abandoned and overgrown. Farmers who tried to settle it reported strange occurrences. Crops rotted overnight, animals disappeared, and the workers, people, began vanishing, leaving only a single twisted Scarecrow in the middle of the fields. They said it was a curse. A farmer, they whispered, had been obsessed with controlling the land, with watching everything that moved. When he died mysteriously, his spirit didn't leave. It became part of the land, bound to the corn, bound to that Scarecrow. It watches, the old man said, shaking his head. It waits, and it moves when you move. If you try to stop, it will come closer. And if you don't obey, he didn't finish the sentence. I didn't want him to, but I felt it in my bones. I understood. The Scarecrow didn't just stalk. It demanded compliance, movement. It fed on fear and on the act of running. That night, as I slept in the hollowed-out barn at the edge of the field, I dreamt of the Scarecrow. Not the one I saw, but dozens of them, lining the edges of the world, stitched faces tilting, eyes glinting. In my dream, they whispered, "Move! Move! Move!" I woke in a cold sweat, the smell of straw and earth thick in the air. And there it was, closer than ever. The Scarecrow tilting its head, motionless but impossibly present. I knew then. I couldn't just run. I had to follow its rules. I had to move. But where? And for how long? Because the longer I stayed, the more I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just a scarecrow in a field. It could be anywhere. Waiting. Watching. Controlling the world around me in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. And as the wind whispered through the corn, I made a choice. One I would regret. I moved. I started walking, not aimlessly, not in panic, but following some instinct, some unspoken rule that the Scarecrow demanded. Every step felt heavy, as though the corn itself was pressing against me. The stalks rustled, brushing my arms, whispering in voices I couldn't understand. The Scarecrow didn't appear right away. At first I thought maybe my fear had finally given way to reason. But then I noticed the shadows. They weren't random. They twisted unnaturally, stretching toward me, tilting like the Scarecrow's head. And then it moved. From the edge of my vision, it emerged, closer than the day before, closer than the night. Its burlap face was stitched in a permanent, sinister smile. Its button eyes reflected the moonlight like dark, watching mirrors. And it walked, not fast, but deliberately, step by step, following my movements. I tried stopping, just for a moment, to catch my breath, to think, but the whisper came again. Low, dry, unmistakable, move! My body obeyed, trembling, shaking. Step after step, I followed, deeper into the field. The corn grew taller, thicker, until I felt swallowed, consumed by the stalks. My flashlight flickered and died. My phone was useless, and yet the Scarecrow's eyes glimmered. Always watching, always moving with me, hours passed. I don't know how many. The stars shifted. The moon waned and rose again. Every now and then I would glance back, and every time it was closer. Not in a hurry, but relentless. I realized then that the rules were simple. I move, or it approaches faster. I stop, or it draws near in a way I can't survive. I needed answers. Desperation drove me to the one place the old man had warned against, the heart of Hollowfield, the center of the cursed field, where the original Scarecrow had been set decades ago. As I entered, the wind changed. The cornstalks bent, bowing to some invisible force. Shadows pooled unnaturally. And there, standing atop a mound of earth, was the Scarecrow in its full, terrifying glory. It was bigger than I remembered. Its stitched face grinned wider, its eyes alive. And behind it, I saw dozens of smaller figures. Straw, sticks, burlap. Less defined, but unmistakably humanoid. It was as if the original farmer had built an army of watchers, and now I was trapped among them. The whisper came again, clearer this time, echoing inside my head. You cannot stop. You cannot hide. You must move. And I realized, with a sinking horror, that movement wasn't just survival. It was submission. And the more I moved, the closer I felt to something else. Something the Scarecrow wanted me to become. By now, I couldn't tell where the field ended and reality began. Days and nights had blurred into one continuous stretch of corn. One endless corridor lined with shadows and whispers. My mind started to fracture. The Scarecrow's presence was everywhere. In reflections, in dreams, in the wind that pressed against my face. Sleep became impossible. I would doze for minutes, sometimes hours, only to wake and find the Scarecrow closer than before. Always watching, always moving. It began to influence my thoughts. At first, subtle. Little suggestions like, "Don't rest here," or "Move faster." Then commands embedded in my own mind. I felt my body obeying without me realizing it. My hands reached out, brushing against the corn as though guided by some unseen force. My legs carried me down paths I hadn't planned. I tried leaving the field, thinking maybe the curse only existed inside Hollowfield. But the moment I stepped beyond the last stalks, I felt it. A tug at my soul. A thread pulling me back. And when I glanced back, I saw it standing at the edge, taller somehow, its shadow stretching impossibly far, touching even the distant road behind it. One night or day, I no longer knew. I reached a clearing where the moonlight fell across the earth in a pale silver glow. And there the Scarecrow waited. Not alone. A circle of figures surrounded it. Straw men, stitched heads, twisted limbs, all tilting their heads toward me, eyes glinting. Some were small, like children, others taller than any man. They weren't just watching, they were waiting. And in the center, the main Scarecrow raised a hand. Not a threatening gesture, yet every muscle in my body screamed danger. And then I heard it. Clear, in my own voice, "Move." I realized it wasn't whispering to me. It was speaking through me. My own thoughts, my own voice, commanding me. Panic clawed at my mind, but my body obeyed. I started walking, forced to follow the paths it wanted me to follow, deeper into the darkness of the field. Hours, or was it days? Later, I collapsed against a mound of earth, exhausted. And I saw something I hadn't noticed before. The ground beneath the Scarecrow's feet was cracked, roots rising like veins. It wasn't just alive, it was part of the land itself. Hollowfield wasn't a place, it was a prison, and I was trapped inside its body. I understood then the truth I had been running from. The Scarecrow didn't just watch. It claimed. It absorbed the movement, the energy, the very essence of anyone who tried to defy it. And each step I had taken, each mile I had walked, had fed it, strengthened it. There was no escape. Not really, because the Scarecrow was patient, and I was running out of time. By now, I was barely human. My mind frayed, my body moving without full consent, trapped in a loop of walking, running, and obeying. Hollowfield had become more than a place. It was a living, breathing prison, and the Scarecrow was its master. But I wasn't ready to give up. In the dim light of what I could only assume was morning, or maybe it was night, I stumbled across the remains of an old farmhouse. The walls were crumbling, but inside, I found something that made my blood run cold. Journals. Old yellowed pages, scribbled in a hand that shook with fear. The entries told of the original farmer who had died decades ago, the one who became the first Scarecrow. The notes detailed a ritual, a way to bind the Watcher, to trap it in its own creation. But it came with a warning. To bind it, you must step willingly into its eyes. To look into its gaze is to surrender a piece of your soul. You may survive, or you may become the next Watcher. I stared at the pages. My hope and terror collided. This was my only chance, but even reading the words, I felt its presence tighten around me. The Scarecrow wasn't just outside the field anymore. It was inside me. My thoughts, my fear, my very heartbeat. It was feeding on all of it. I had no choice. As night fell, I returned to the center of Hollowfield. The Scarecrow waited, taller now, more monstrous, surrounded by its army of straw figures. The wind swirled around me, carrying whispers of all the souls it had claimed before me. I took a deep breath. I had memorized the ritual. I stepped forward, its eyes locked onto mine, and I understood, truly understood, the horror I had been avoiding. Looking into them wasn't just seeing. It was being seen, every secret, every fear, every thought laid bare. And yet, to bind it? I had to continue. I whispered the words from the journal, voice shaking, echoing across the field. By your own gaze, I bind you. By my will, I claim you no more. For a moment, the Scarecrow froze. The smaller figures halted. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. And then, something moved behind its eyes, something ancient, dark, and clever. It wasn't defeated. Not yet, because the Scarecrow had learned patience. It had learned cunning, and it had been waiting for someone like me. The Scarecrow didn't attack. It didn't move, or at least not in ways I could understand. It simply watched. Its button eyes glimmered with an intelligence that was impossible, a consciousness older than Hollowfield itself. I whispered the ritual again, louder this time, voice trembling but determined. By your own gaze, I bind you. By my will, I claim you no more. The wind rose, howling through the corn, bending stalks as though the entire field were alive. The smaller figures, the straw puppets that had followed me for days, began to sway, leaning in, whispering my name in voices not my own. I realized, with a chill deep in my bones, that each of them was a fragment of a soul it had already claimed. And then, the truth struck me. The Scarecrow wasn't just a watcher. It was a collector. Every step I had taken, every movement I had obeyed, it wasn't just feeding fear. It was gathering parts of me, pieces of my life, my memories, my very essence. And the closer I had come to binding it, the closer I had come to becoming one of them. It tilted its head, and in that motion, I felt a pull, a tug at my mind, my body, my soul. My vision blurred. I saw myself standing still in the center of the field, my eyes empty, my body a shell, a new watcher added to the army. Panic surged, but I forced myself to continue. I repeated the ritual, slower this time, feeling the words burn in my throat. By your own gaze, I bind you. By my will, I claim you no more. The Scarecrow's body shivered as though struck by 1,000 invisible hands. The smaller figures froze. The wind stilled. For a brief, terrifying moment, the field was silent. And then it smiled. Not a victory smile, but a promise. A warning. The Scarecrow had not been defeated. It had only waited for me to understand the rules. I felt the tug again, but this time I resisted. I moved differently, not out of fear, not out of instinct, but with purpose. With defiance, I realized something horrifying and empowering at once. The Scarecrow only commanded those who feared it. If I stopped fearing, maybe I could survive. But the moment I thought that, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, a shadow detaching itself from the field, stepping closer. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that it would never stop watching. Because Hollowfield isn't just a place. The Scarecrow isn't just a thing. They are eternal. And they are patient, and me, I had survived. For now, I ran. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Every step I took, I felt the weight of Hollowfield pressing down on me, as if the corn itself were closing in. The Scarecrow wasn't chasing. It didn't need to. Its presence was everywhere, watching, waiting, controlling. And each footstep I took felt like it was pulling me deeper into its grasp. I tried roads, highways, anything to leave the cursed land behind. But Hollowfield stretched. The fields twisted impossibly. Paths I swore I had walked before looping back. Cornstalks rose unnaturally high. Shadows bending toward me, whispering my name, urging me to move. At one point, I stopped, exhausted, terrified, trembling, and I saw it, not at the edge of the field, not in a shadow, right in front of me. Its stitched face grinned, its button eyes glimmered like black mirrors, and its arm lifted slowly, pointing directly at me. I understood then. Escape wasn't about distance. Escape wasn't about running. It was about obeying the rules it had set. moving, following, living on its terms. And yet, I felt defiance, a spark of life, of human will, that hadn't been snuffed out entirely. I didn't know how, but I realized the Scarecrow could be resisted, but only in one way, not by fleeing, not by hiding, but by confronting it. I turned back, into the heart of Hollowfield, into the center, where the original Scarecrow had stood, surrounded by its army of watchers. The wind swirled violently, carrying the whispers of countless lost souls. The smaller straw figures shifted, tilting their heads, waiting. And the Scarecrow, it loomed taller, impossibly massive, its presence almost suffocating. I whispered the ritual again, forcing the words out. By your own gaze, I bind you. By my will, I claim you no more. This time, I didn't fear. I stared. And I moved deliberately, on my own terms, not running, not obeying blindly, walking forward into its eyes, into its field of power. And as I approached, I saw something horrifying, something I hadn't understood until now. It had been testing me. Every move I had made, every step I had taken, it had been preparing me for this. If I faltered, if I hesitated, I would become another watcher, another fragment of its army. And then I realized I couldn't falter. I stepped into the center of Hollowfield, the wind whipping through the towering corn, the moonlight casting grotesque shadows across the ground. The Scarecrow stood waiting, taller than ever, its stitched face smiling, its button eyes glinting like black stars. The smaller straw figures formed a circle around it, tilting their heads, whispering, a chorus of the lost souls it had claimed over decades. I whispered the ritual one last time. By your own gaze, I bind you. By my will, I claim you no more. The Scarecrow shivered, its body quivering like dry leaves in a storm. The wind rose into a deafening howl. The shadows stretched and twisted, writhing like serpents around me. And then, silence. For a moment, I believed I had won. I could feel the field releasing its hold on me. I could breathe. I could move freely, unshackled. But then I realized the truth. The Scarecrow wasn't defeated. It had been teaching me, shaping me, preparing me. It didn't need to chase me anymore. It had already claimed what it truly wanted. My awareness, my fear, my obedience. Its eyes locked on mine. And suddenly, I could feel the tug, the pull of Hollowfield not around me, but inside me. The wind wasn't just outside. It was in my mind, in my heartbeat, in the rhythm of my steps. I stumbled backward, terrified. But the Scarecrow's gaze followed me. Always. Watching. Waiting. Then I understood. I wasn't free. Not truly. I had survived, yes, but survival had a price. The Scarecrow didn't just consume bodies or souls. It consumed will. It had made me part of Hollowfield in a way I couldn't escape. And as the corn rustled around me, I saw a movement in the shadows. One of the smaller straw figures tilted its head toward me, eerily familiar. My own reflection. My own face, stitched into burlap, grinning. The wind whispered, "You move. Therefore you exist. You watch. Therefore you are ours." I tried to scream, but no sound came. My voice, my mind, my being, it was no longer entirely my own. The Scarecrow had taught me the final lesson. Movement is survival, but survival is surrender. I blinked, and the field was empty. The Scarecrow was gone, for now, but I knew better. It never truly leaves. Hollowfield is eternal, and so is the Watcher. Somewhere, out there, I am walking, watching, waiting, and now, so are you. Because the Scarecrow doesn't just haunt fields. It haunts those who see it. It waits, and it watches. Forever. Thanks for watching this terrifying, scary story. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment END so that we could understand you were with us till the end. If you've ever had a creepy experience, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. As well as please let us know, where are you watching from? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Last but not the least, before leaving, please check out the horror story ebook. Link in the description. See you in the next one. Until next time, stay safe and stay out of the shadows. Good night.